Can real estate prices really go up forever in Australia? In this video, I want to discuss with you why we may be seeing the biggest opportunity of our lifetimes, our generations, and why I think most people are sleeping at the wheel. We have basically this episode where I want to break down why the 1% will succeed, and I've spoken about in detail why there's a divide between the rich and the poor. Well, what I'm trying to do is get at least one person to go from one side to the other, and that's what we're going to do right now. Hey guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you are listening to the audio version of this via your podcast player, then welcome, and definitely leave a review down after you've listened to this episode and check out the other episodes on the channel. If you are new and you're watching it on the YouTube channel, then welcome and you get to see my face, but definitely smash that red button, subscribe to the channel. I've got over 100 videos across personal finance, real estate, cryptocurrency, financial freedom, all the good stuff. So now, jumping straight in, I want to wish you guys a happy birthday because, hey, you know what? It's the 50th birthday, the 50th anniversary of our fiat currency. In 1971, we basically had a dollar not backed by the gold standard anymore. So this was the removal of the gold standard. For those who don't know, basically banks had to issue out, say these notes, but they were backed by gold. So it was a fractional reserve, right? And without getting too technical, basically in 1971, they decided, hey, well, you know what? Who cares how much gold we have? Let's just keep printing out the money and then we get to make more. And the banks were happy. Everyone else was happy because in the short term, it looked like it was a really good idea. But as we've seen over time, 2020 and 2021 will always be known as the period where the money machines went brr, where all the money was getting printed, all this fake money came out of nowhere and nobody really understood why. But because we had a pandemic, most people were focusing on that, the health issues, the lockdowns, and weren't really focusing on what was happening in the background. So the whole system is financially screwed. After 50 years, well done, we finally got here. But this episode is around why this is happening, but it may not be in our control. Like you can't just go out there and say, oh, no, I'm not going to have the Australian dollar anymore. I'm going to use my own dollar, the Ravi coin, right? I suppose with crypto, a lot of that stuff is changing. That's why I say, guys, get educated because you want to know what's happening next. It's like the birth of the internet. We are basically at the point where the internet's about to come in, and those people who understand how websites work, they understand web development, they understand coding, will do really well. But then there's also others that can leverage those things and go, well, I can build social media companies on this. And that's where we are in relation to crypto and decentralized finance. So that's my 2 seconds plug for crypto. And I say plug because I want more people to start educating themselves, get away from this taboo topic that, oh, Bitcoin's a scam and like crypto's going to zero or made me so much money overnight. Either way, I don't like both narratives. I like to focus in the middle and what long-term projects, long-term changes are happening in the space. Now, we're here for Australian property. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. But it's very important to understand why. We need to think about why Australian prices could potentially keep going up forever. Do we have corrections along the way? Most definitely. I expect them. And when we have those times, I also expect a lot of fear to be in the system. We have come off the back of 2020 being one of the greatest years of Australian price growth in, properties. Yet some people are still scared now about going back in because lockdowns are around. We've got supply that's really constrained again. We're starting to see the mechanics again of what was 2020 all over again. We had the normal COVID. We didn't know what it was. Now we've got the Delta variant. We've got vaccines, but they're not being rolled out. There's so much happening. We need to take a breath. We need to relax and we need to enjoy this episode. Before I continue, there is so much that I talk about here and I've given to you guys for free on the YouTube channel. I will continue doing that. That is definitely my promise. I love making these videos. I spend time editing, spend time shooting, and spend time researching, a lot of it. Now, all of that research doesn't find its way onto my sheet right here or to the videos that you guys watch or listen to me on your audio. So, if you want extra information, if you want timely information being daily updates and different topics that we need to talk about, then definitely go and head over to Patreon where I've got a community building out. We've got over 60 people now and it's amazing because the conversations we're having, in the Mastermind Access group is like next level because, everyone's bringing something to the table. So we're learning from each other. Not only that, but people in the base and the premium Telegram groups, they get access to so much as well, where I'm talking about economics, where I'm talking about property prices, I'm talking about how do we get prepared With this information, we've got the tools, everyone's got the tools, everyone's got the information, but we don't know how to use them. In that group, what I'm trying to do is learn how to use those things so that we can go out there and, attain financial freedom. So link in the description if you want to check it out. So before we go into price predictions, why is Ravi saying property prices will go up forever? Let's just take a step back. The current state of the economy, right? We are now faced with basically a double dip recession. We are heading into recession, I would say, by the end of this year, especially given lockdowns in Melbourne, lockdowns in Sydney. I mean, I live in Sydney, so we are basically, I think, on 7th or 8th week now, which is insane. But when we got into lockdowns initially, I was like, there is no way we're getting out in like 2 to 3 weeks. Just knowing how much movement of people was still happening. We didn't have like a hard lockdown like, Victoria does. We had parts of Sydney still open. And I was like, this makes no sense. You're telling me that people in this quadrant of Sydney can stay, but then the rest can just roam around and do whatever. I'm like, all it takes is one person to go from here into this area and we're screwed. That's exactly what happened. We clock in like 300-400 a day, but we're here for good news. Always have context, always have perspective. We are living through the greatest time. Financially, there is a huge opportunity and we need to focus on the right things. I totally get it. You might be, affected by COVID. You might be affected in the sense of financially, emotionally, mentally. I totally get that. But you're here wanting to make a change. So let's talk about why I think property prices will always go up and why I believe there will be corrections, but I don't think they're going to be substantial. And in order for us to really understand this, we need to go back in time. We need to look at 50 years ago, what was Australian prices here in Australia like? So if we really look at that, we're going, okay, inflation, everyone talks about it, we understand it. Do we though? Do we? Now I've got something here that just blew my mind when I was looking at it. So we go and look at a catalog from Woolworths. And I'll share this on my Instagram story. So definitely go check me out on there, Personal Finance with Ravi. And I can see here that you can basically get, a can of beans and spaghetti, 15 cents. You can get a whole chicken for $1.09. You've got coffee, basically instant coffee, 30 cents. You've got orange juice, which is 79 cents. Peter's yogurt, pretty much what costs us $4 is like 16 cents, which is absolutely crazy stuff. So apples, basically a kilo for 39 cents, which is crazy. Just looking at these prices, I mean, it feels weird. But let's go back in time, right? So if we go back and we look at what was 50 years ago, what was that looking like? Now, the average wage in Australia was $4,100 a year, okay? $4,100 a year. Now, on average now, we're probably making about $48,000 to $49,000 a year. So we've already had an increase in what the wages look like. Now, it's 50 years, so not how many people are still wondering what happens in economy, or economics rather, from 50 years ago, they're still looking at it. I don't think there's many. But if we leave inflation aside and we look at, say, something like house prices, how are house prices related to income? Okay, this has always been the age-old argument. Ravi doesn't know what he's talking about. Prices are coming down. Load of shit, guy. Okay, great. Now that we've established I'm an idiot and I'm on YouTube, non-financial advice, I don't talk about financial advice, right? I'm just some guy on YouTube. So let's just explore and see what was that like. Well, in 1970, the average wage was $4,100, but the average Sydney house cost, wait for it, don't spill your coffee, because it was $18,700. Let's just take a moment to realize how significant that is. Now, most of Sydney were still, there was parts that were still, not developed. And there's areas there's new suburbs that always pop up, right? But we're talking about, proper blue chip properties, 18,700 50 years ago. Okay, so what are we going to do with this information? Well, let's just take it a step further before we, draw a conclusion. So that was a ratio of house to income of 4.5. Now, if we take that and we actually look at what's happening right now. So the 4.5, by the way, is basically how much you make in a year multiplied by 4.5 is the average house price. So basically it would take you 4 to 5 years to actually go and purchase a property outright in Sydney. So obviously, you could go and deposit and, pay it off over time, but that's pretty much the average. Now, to give you an insight as to what the average is now, well, we've seen income go up. That's 10x, right? We've gone from 4,100 a year to now 48,000. What have house prices done? Well, now in Sydney, it's ballooned up 12.2% of your annual income is required for you to purchase a property. That is crazy. Like, to actually think that is, we're talking about average price. All right. There are properties out there that you probably wouldn't live in at that sort of rate, 12 times your average wage. You're probably not living in those types of places, but we are in a crazy time. And this is just 50 years ago. So what happens in the next 20 to 30? Well, a large portion of this growth that we're going to see now, and it's already happening, is the fake money and financial system that it's been built on. I say this all the time. I'm like, guys, let's just realize that property prices, hard assets, are growing faster than your wages are. And yes, as much as people want to say that, they've been complaining for the last 50 years to say, well, we need a correction. It's unsustainable, right? So what happens? Oh, we get a bit of a correction, get a bit of a pullback, but then we're taking off again. And everything works in cycles. But we need to understand we're only heading in one direction. And if you really see the long-term aspect of what that graph looks like for Australian property, it's heading in the right trajectory if you own assets. If you don't own assets, that graph is the worst thing that you could see, because you are losing purchasing power. The money that's in your bank account, the fiat currency, is losing its value because they keep printing more of it, okay? But not only that, in order for you to use that money to then purchase hard assets, that divide is becoming bigger and bigger. Are we seeing wage growth? Pretty much non-existent. But are we seeing hard assets grow? Yes, we are. And we're seeing them at incredible levels. So let's say you even took a promotion over the last 12 months, and let's say, you got an increase of 10%. Well, that wouldn't have kept up with the ratio between the house prices to your income, because house prices on average was growing at 16% or 15%, right? And you got a wage growth of 10%, which, by the way, is like significant, and not everyone was getting that. Most people fell backwards. So now you're seeing this divide between the hard assets, how you can attain it. Affordability is just a concern. Social housing calls for social housing, but this is the narrative. And we have so many Australians that just absolutely love Australian property. And so I don't see how we lose that flavor, and how with an asset that's backed by so much demand, backed by the fact that there's a lack of supply, and we've got population growth going through the roof, lack of supply for that growth, and then we haven't even introduced immigration into the system, and it's just going to be crazy to see what happens. Now, take it with a grain of salt. I'm a buyer's agent, all right? Obviously, I'm here on YouTube, and I try and educate. I've got videos here to educate, free education. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm not here to try and make a quick dollar to go, hey, by the way, I've said property price is going to go up. Maybe you should give me a call, and then I can be, your buyer's agent. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is start getting prepared. With or without me, this is going to happen, right? You can go and purchase property without me. I've got people that email me and say, hey, Ravi, thank you so much for your videos. I went out and purchased property, or I went out and did this and this, right? Awesome. Great work. I reply saying, well done, right? You're making the right moves. But then there's others that are like, hey, look, I really want to make a move. I don't have 6 months to sit down and research. I want peace of mind. I want someone who's done it, experienced enough. Let me contact you. Let's do a strategy session and do it that way. So there's both sides. And I'm not advocating for one over the other. I'm just saying, look, here's your options, guys. I'm giving you the options. Do what you feel is comfortable for you. But if we look at, what we've seen in the current state of the economy, you've got the pandemic. So all this money comes into the system. Property prices are going up. We feel like we're richer, but we're not actually, because, inflation is really kicking into the system. There's people that own hard assets are going and replicating and multiplying their wealth because they're like, oh, this is easy. Like, my property went up by 30%. If I own $1 million property, I just went up by 300K. I just made 300K this year, guys. I'm looking pretty good. It's a pretty good year. So I'm going to use the 300K. Maybe I take out 100K and buy a new car. Awesome. Now I'm living the best life. And that's pretty much what's happening. I make a joke of it, but that's what's happening. So we've got people that are losing money by losing jobs, but then there's others that are making a shitload of money and their assets are growing through the roof, all-time highs. Now, with property, we've had more growth in the last 12 months than we've seen collectively in most places over the last 8 years. So what are we saying here, right? Cheap debt, mortgage deferral payments, right? It's almost like the system is pushing us towards this environment where we need to buy property. Otherwise, we've lost our chance to own a home, and home ownership is a thing of the past. In 20 years, right? I'm being optimistic here. I think it's going to happen a lot earlier than that. But the idea of owning a house, gone, right? Whoever purchases what they can, again, scarcity, uniqueness, whoever can purchase a house with land, it has a large component of land. Whoever can purchase that in the next sort of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know, right? What that timeline looks like, but it's going to happen, is we're going to run out. And then obviously you see, places, developers come in, they build up units. And that's going to happen. It's going to happen in more areas. And I believe it's coming to regional Australia at some point as well. We're probably just a few, maybe a decade or two behind where the capital cities are. So that's where the opportunity is, if you know what I'm saying, right? But essentially, we've got people that want to move into these areas. There's not enough supply being built. So what happens? Supply and demand. Now you've got people from overseas that have a lot of cash that really want to come to Australia. Now, I say this with a heavy heart. Like, you see the information in the news around Afghanistan and what's happening there. It is crazy that we live in a world like this. But we also live in a world where people have nothing to worry about, really, when you compare it to something like that in Australia, yet we've got something to complain about. It's just simply you've got too much time. Focus on what's right. Focus on what's going to bring you, productive results, and get yourself sorted. Because if you've got time enough to sit there and have an argument online about some social media shit, or negative comments down in the comments section below, then it means you have too much time. I look at those comments and I'm like, I feel bad for you because you have too much time to actually put your 2 cents here that nobody cares about. Full stop. Go do something productive, right? So what are we doing, right? Why are property prices going to go up forever? Well, show me otherwise. We've got interest rates going lower. They have to continue going lower because of how much debt is in the system. I've mentioned on this channel before, whether it's through the podcast or even on the YouTube channel where I release more videos than the podcast, so check it out, is that we are in a situation where debt is going to get cheaper unless something changes drastically. And if something drastically changes, which is like, something like inflation, well, if people know how to navigate the next couple of years, inflation is going to be your best friend. And that's why I keep saying, I'm like, guys, and I say this a lot in the mastermind and I love it. The conversation we're having in there is all access, right? I'm saying exactly what I'm buying. There was crypto, is now pumping again. I've got a crypto update video coming out on the channel later this week. Definitely subscribe. But in that, I'm talking about, hey guys, I just bought this, and this. This is what's happened over the last 7 days. This is why I'm buying these things. But I can't say that on here because people come out in the comments and be like, oh, he's shilling coins. He's now saying, oh, buy this. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. You guys need to get educated. And I start prompting for you guys to research certain things, right? Whether you go and purchase or not, that's besides the point. We're in the trial run, right? We have an opportunity that's starting now. We have a trial run with crypto. Property prices already flying through. We've had a trial run for like years. You could have sat back for the last 10, 15 years and just research markets, get analysis paralysis and not actually have made a move in 2020. You've lost one of the best buying opportunities of a lifetime. What's the cost of that? So why I think property prices will continue moving up, and we're going to see the second leg of this next, bull run in property, I suppose, in prices, is debt can't move, right? The price of debt cannot move. And the only way it moves is if we have inflation come in. And when we have inflation come in, your property prices will go up. Your debt becomes irrelevant with inflation. Your dollar buys a lot less. And as we see people's wealth being tied in with hard assets, they can then eventually sell those properties or whatever it is, take out equity, whatever they want to do, then be able to execute that on a day-to-day life. And that's how the rich get richer. I thought it was very important to make this video timely, obviously 50th anniversary of, fiat currency, but I don't see it lasting longer than, the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to see digital currencies come in. We've already seen the mechanics for it happening. A lot of people talk about, Bitcoin, but do they really understand what Bitcoin is? And, I've seen some other, people that talk about property is everything, right? Property is everything. Invest in property. And I'm glad if you're listening this far, this is where the real nugget is. So I'm glad that you've stayed. And I reward you with the fact that look at digital real estate, right? It's not about what we see in the real life. It's what we see in the metaverse. And that's where I'm sort of starting to really dabble in, really understand and research, because I don't think most people understand what's happening. Is we are having a big shift from the real physical world into the metaverse and what is the digital world. Yes, some people are like, oh, we've already been living there, right? Because we spend our time on social media and things like that. No, I'm going further than that. I'm saying, hey, in 5 to 10 years, do we have a place where suddenly you're not leaving your house at all? Are we already getting conditioned for that with lockdowns? I don't know, but it's something very interesting. There is things happening in the background, and if you don't have the right contacts, you don't have the right conversations, you will never know about them. The fact that you're here listening to this has now prompted you to go, hey, I never thought about that. Now that prompts you to have a conversation with someone else. It prompts you to maybe go and research something or Google something. But think about having that on more of a daily basis. And that's what I'm trying to offer through the Patreon community. Again, it may sound like a plug, but I'm plugging one of the best things that I personally believe will be something that's undervalued over the next couple of years, because we're getting in at a time where things are about to get really heated. And it's going to be a motion of people coming in. A huge emotion at the time as well is people coming in, FOMOing in because they can see the growth that's already there. We're still buying very strategically, very deliberate about our plans right now for clients, for ourselves, and how we prepare for that is very, very important. It's the money that you make in buying something is a lot more than when you sell something. So just think about that as you go through the rest of this week. And as always, I thank you so much for the support. We are building a community and I love it. I love the feeling of knowing there's other people answering each other's questions on the Facebook group. Patreon community is growing. We've got the YouTube channel growing. It's freaking amazing. I love it. So definitely leave your review. If you are new here, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.